Hello and welcome to the AGRIMINDS podcast. My name is Casey Bull and I am doing a solo episode today. We are a few days post AGRIMINDS Summit and I really wanted to record an episode while this was all fresh on my mind. I want to dive into all things AGRIMINDS Summit. I've been getting a lot of private messages with people who are really curious about what all went into the planning, why I decided this, why I decided to not do that. What was the feedback on the sessions? What did the people in the room look like? And so I thought I would do an episode where I shared all of those details and the decisions that I've made and why I made them, as well as a place to document this experience in this event. So I will be sharing my evaluation, my feedback, my debriefing with you. I do have notes because I do want to make sure I follow a flow. However, if something pops into my head that it doesn't make sense, I may be a little bit all over the place. So hopefully you can follow along. I wanted to start by sharing this on the podcast and not just reflecting in my own notes because, to be honest with you, this is the kind of information that I wish more people shared. The behind the scenes, the why did you do it this way versus that way? What are some things to think about if I were to do my own event type of thing? So at the time of recording, this is late March 2026. And so just roughly a year ago, I kind of had this idea of doing something in person because I had just wrapped up a session of AgriMinds Live, which is my 12-week group coaching program. And I've had a couple people ask me when AgriMinds Live was over, they're like, okay, so what's next? And the only real opportunity that I had for them was we could do one-on-one coaching or you can join AgriMinds Live again. I did play around with doing like an AgriMinds Elite, which was like the alumni. Like you've gone through the program, now work with other people who've gone through other cohorts within AgriMinds Live. So anyway, it's a constant evolving thing. But I had somebody ask, they're like, well, can we get like an in-person event? Can we get together with other people and other cohorts? I want to meet the people that were in my cohort in person. And so I was just trying to figure out the best way to go about this. And part of me was like, okay, do I want to do a retreat? Do I want to do a conference? And here's the thought process behind how I came up with Summit. So to me, in my mind, retreat did feel like a smaller group, more intimate, but it also felt like, every time I've heard of the word retreat, it's like we're renting this gigantic house and we all get together. Or, I don't know. It felt strange because my clients are both men and women, and I wasn't sure how to go about that. Like, do we invite their spouses? Um, do we have it like camp where the men sleep in this cabin and the women sleep in that cabin? And it was just, listen, it's freaking weird. I don't know the right way to go about doing a retreat. It felt strange. But I also didn't love the idea of a conference because that to me felt big and it felt like, I thought of hotel conference rooms or giant arenas or whatever being booked and there being a trade show. And I just didn't want people to associate the AgriMinds event with trade show and conference like feels. I did not want to be compared to anything else like that. When I think of a conference in the ag industry, it feels very much so educational. And here's all this information on all the new up and coming things. And that also felt not right. It felt like it needed to be big and showy, and that was not the vibe either. I did not want there to be a trade show. I did not want there to be vendors. I did not want people to feel like they were in a sea of other people and were just a number or a person, a body sitting at a table that nobody up on stage could really see eye to eye with. And so I landed with the term summit because it kind of felt like the best of both worlds. It felt like Summit could be smaller and a little bit more intimate, but also very professional at the same time. And so Summit felt good to me. I did have an idea of how many people I wanted to be in the room. You know, I was shooting for like 50 or less. And even 50 felt like a lot of people to me. We ended up having, I think, 30 something. I can't remember the final number, but 30 something was our final number for the summit. And honestly, it was like the perfect amount. The room wasn't so full of people that, you know, it wasn't intimate. I knew probably everybody in the room's name before they arrived. There were a couple of people that I knew their name, but I hadn't seen them in person yet. And so it was nice to put a face to the name, but we were able to call each other by first name throughout the entire event, right? Like, and that was also here I am jumping around. I did get some feedback that I should have had like a name tag or like a table tent with their name on it. And I didn't have name tags because, in my mind, aesthetically, I hate the look of a white sticker name tag on a shirt. However, looking back and hearing feedback from attendees, that would have been a worthwhile expense because nobody in the room knew each other. And so, you know, for those of them who struggled with remembering names, it would have been easier to put a name to the face. So, definitely something I'm going to consider for future reference. I don't know what that's going to look like, but it is good information. It's good feedback. We did end up going around the room and everybody saying their name, where they're from, a little bit about them, something that they were passionate about, which I thought was kind of a nice introduction, right? Like, what's something you're passionate about? Not what's your job title? What are you good at, right? But like, what's something that you're passionate about? What's something that lights you on fire? So I really did like that. We did do that probably too late in the day, if I'm honest. Like, looking back, I probably should have done that mid-morning or so, but we did do that at the right after lunch. So like mid-afternoon of day one. So again, good feedback, good for me to have awareness around for sure. And so what was I saying before that? Oh, so the size of the room. I thought it was a really good size of the room because even the other speakers were beginning to remember names and you know, if we said, does anybody have any comments around this, like, does anybody want to share what they wrote down for this prompt or whatever, like, people were able to do that. And I feel like everybody had the opportunity to speak and share if they wanted it. Not everybody wanted to talk out loud, which is totally fine too. But if they wanted to, they had the opportunity. And I don't think if we would have had a much bigger group, we probably wouldn't have been able to do that because not everybody would have gotten the chance due to time, right? But I think this was like the perfect size of group to feel like they got to know the other people in the room. But there were enough people in the room that it was like you got to mingle with somebody new every chance. And so really loved the size of the group, to be honest with you. Now, ironically, I got this question a lot from both attendees that were at the event and from people online like that saw me posting about the summit. And they wanted to know, how did you come up with that venue at that location? So the AGRIMINDS Summit was at Retreat 21 in Marysville, Ohio. And I'll be very honest with you, this was not my first choice. I actually was looking at a place up in Michigan that aesthetically was the right vibe. Like, I loved this place. But then, and the budget was friendly as well. But then I started to have more conversations with the venue contact. And I was like, here's the flow of the day. And here's, like when I would like to have breakfast and lunch and supper and all the things. And, here's some networking opportunity time. And what I realized, this was more like it was kind of like a house, but it was definitely in a venue. And it was for that retreat style event. And what I figured out, which I'm so glad that I asked all of these very detailed questions prior to giving them any money, because here's the deal. I was so close to writing them a check, but I was being what I thought at the time was like annoying with questions. I mean, I was like, I want to make sure that the flow works with this building. I want to make sure that the food is what we want it to be, that like I really was being hyper detailed, and I probably annoyed the event venue contact, but honestly, don't care. This was a lot of money. It was a big investment, especially out of my own pocket because we didn't do sponsors, which I'll go into more. Um, but I am so glad that I asked these questions. The make or break for me was when I was talking about meal prep and stuff. And I guess I saw it, but I didn't notice it in the pictures because I didn't go to this place in person. I was just looking at their pictures online. The kitchen was in the back of the room where we were gonna be meeting. And so when I say it's like a legitimate house, like there was this big open area in front of this gorgeous set of windows and a mantle and a fireplace. It was so stunning and it felt very lodge-like. And I was like, man, that just would just be the most perfect backdrop. But literally, you turn around and there's the kitchen. No walls, no separate room. No, it was literally in the back of the room. So I was like, oh, so you're going to be preparing the food like right behind us. Also, they would be washing the dishes and cleaning up right behind us. And I was like, no, no, no. That's a make or break for me because I don't want I don't want attendees to be distracted while like the food is cooking. Like, could you imagine? We're almost to lunchtime and we're trying to be doing breath work with Greg and doing deep breathing, and there's chicken cooking 20 feet away from us. And so I was just like, I just don't love that. And then also, like, could you imagine us trying to get into Lauren's session about worthiness and thinking about our values? And you're hearing dishes clinking and water running, and it just like ruined the whole thing for me. And so maybe I'll utilize that place in the future for a separate event. But for the AgriMinds Summit, it just was like a no-go. And so like I said, I had my heart set on that place before I started any of the planning because I had met the manager, and her and I were having conversations. However, I just went straight to Google and I was like, show me all the event venues in the Midwest. And I mean, I spent hours looking at all of these different event venues. And so, for context, I live in West Central Indiana. And so I wanted to be able to drive to the event venue because I was going to be hauling all of the stuff in my own vehicle, right? And I didn't want to have to ship all this stuff. Like, what if it didn't get shipped there in time? What if the event venue lost it or damaged it? Or I don't know. I just didn't want to have to count on them to help me with that. And so I personally wanted to be responsible because I guess I was being somewhat controlling about that. Like, I didn't want to have to count on anybody or depend on anybody. And if something were to happen, I didn't want to be mad at anybody. So I wanted to put all of that on me, and I was fine with that. So I wanted to be able to find a place I could drive to, and I wanted to be able to find a place that was close to an airport for those who weren't local. And I wanted to find a place that had options like lodging, restaurants, but also wasn't a hotel conference room and wasn't in downtown city area. And so I'm looking, and there was some really cool places, but then like the food wasn't included. So then you had to mess with a caterer, and it was just like there were some stipulations like, oh, here's the space, but you got to also buy this, and this extra. And then you also have to find the tables and chairs. Like, if you've planned a wedding before, you understand what I'm saying when, like, that's a lot of different contacts and a lot of different things to manage. And so I was kind of looking for like this all inclusive space that had the tables and chairs, that had the staff, that had the food, that had the vibe. And so, and then also the location, right? Location, location, location. And so I finally just randomly stumbled upon Retreat 21 in Marysville, Ohio. And I'm looking at the pictures and I'm like, huh, this is kind of cool because it's out in the country, right? It's surrounded by fields or pasture. And I mean, it's just very, very, very out in the open. But it's 15 minutes from Dublin, which is like just the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio area. And so I was like, okay, people could fly in, lots of hotel options, lots of places to go eat. And it's also got that country, out in the woods settings. Like, some of the attendees slept in cabins and geodomes at the location that were like, I slept in one of the cabins, zero cell phone service, which was both a pro and a con because your girl wanted to go over some notes before the summit, and I couldn't because I didn't have any cell phone service, and so therefore I didn't have any Wi-Fi service. And so it was honestly great though, because it made me slow down. And again, that's one of the things that I wanted to be different from other events, is I did not want there to be content filling every nook and cranny of the event. I did not want there to be speaker after speaker after speaker, just shoving stuff in to a day and a half, like as much as I possibly could. I wanted it to be slower paced. And I know that that is uncomfortable for some people. The awkward silence, like, I intentionally put in slower pace. I wouldn't call it dead space. I'd call it white space, available space. That way we didn't have to rush. And I didn't want people to feel like we were talking about something, but we had to stop because we had to move to the next thing. And I know, for future reference for the panel, right? That was one of the things. It's like, the panel was called Real Talk. And we had pre-submitted questions from attendees that were like, hey, we want this answered. Can you talk about this some more or whatever? And so I had pre-submitted questions that I wanted to go through. And honestly, we only got through like 3 or 4. And part of me is super bummed about that, because there were some questions I know people needed answered. And so we dedicated an hour and a half ish for the panel. We only ended up having about an hour or so because things went longer. But again, I planned there to be some flexible time because I didn't want to move on from something if it was unfinished, right? Like, I really wanted to make sure we dedicated time and space for the conversation until I knew, like, okay, we've completely talked about everything that we could about this. Like, hopefully that answered your question, type of thing. And so feedback that I got around the panel was that people wished it was twice as long. So instead of an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, they wanted like 2 hours. Like, one person even said they would listen to the panel for the entire afternoon. So that's something I will take into consideration moving forward, is really giving more time to that open conversation. And with that size of group, it was like the perfect size of group for that type of conversation. And what was really cool is people were ready to talk about it. I was so nervous that nobody was going to talk, or nobody was going to feel comfortable raising their hand or talking out of like, hey, here's my question, or can you expand on that? Right? Like, people were so vocal and engaged, and it was so cool. Um, it was really cool. And another comment that I got, because the audience, the people in the room, were I would say not quite 50-50 men to women. I would say there were just a hair more, just a couple more women than there were men. But that surprised a lot of people. Like I even heard the men say, like, I thought for sure I was going to be the only guy in the room. But it was really cool to see. It was a very healthy mix of both men and women. And I would say equally engaging, right? Like it wasn't just women talking or just men talking, but both were very vocal. And it was so freaking cool to hear how vulnerable people were getting. And so Thomas Eisenbarth was one of the guys on the panel, the speaker panel, and he also did a short session on day 2 about applying what you've learned. And something that he quoted, he's just like, vulnerability brings out vulnerability. And I would absolutely say, without a doubt, every single speaker was so vulnerable. I mean, yes, I ended up freaking crying on day 2, which we can talk about another time, but it really was just so cool. And the part that hit me the most, this is why I ended up crying on day 2, because we were kind of wrapping up and I just was kind of reflecting on the past day and a half and giving myself permission to acknowledge what was going on in that event. Like I was trying really hard to stay poised and be the event host, but there became a point where I was literally reflecting and just like, how cool is it that this many people gathered to be in this kind of room when we've been told for generations that this is stuff we don't talk about, that we don't need to talk about, that doesn't need to be addressed, that we should just ignore and shove down and get over and sort out on our own in the quiet room by ourselves. And yet we had so many people show up ready to talk about the topics that we had. And that was just so cool. And I just freaking lost it because I'm like, we've been told that events like this are inappropriate. They are too intense, too triggering. Like, we don't talk about this stuff. And I've had several professionals, I will not name names, but I've had several professionals in different organizations and different companies tell me that they would like to talk about this stuff, but they keep getting shot down by board members or committee members or their managers because like it's just not appropriate to talk about. And it's like, okay, but where do we talk about it to then? Where is the appropriate time? You know, like I get it. Some of the stuff you should not bring up at work. It is not the place. But if we can't bring it up at work and we shouldn't bring it up at home because we're supposed to, you know, look like we have it all together for our kids or our family or whatever, like we're not supposed to tell dad when we're struggling, right? Like, well, when is the right place? Where is the right place? And so that's what the AgriMind Summit was really for. It was very judgment free. There were a lot of disagreements in the room. I disagreed with some of the speakers. I disagreed with some of the attendees, but it was very cordial and it was very awesome. It opened up dialogue and attendees disagreed with other attendees. Attendees disagreed with some of the speakers. And we called it out and we're talking about it in real time. Like one of the speakers would say something and I'd say, well, actually, from my perspective, here's how I go about that. Here's what I think. Because we're in different seasons of life. We have very different backgrounds. We have very different conditionings and cultures that we have to take into consideration. And there was no, well, you're wrong. It's, hey, I never thought about that before. Thanks for sharing that. That does help me. It doesn't change my mind, but it does give me a new perspective to consider. And everybody was so respectful about it. Like, how freaking cool is that? Like, I was so impressed with every single attendee and every single speaker. And it's just like, hey, we may not have the answers, and maybe you didn't get the solution while you were here at the summit for whatever thing is, but you've opened the door to conversation. You've now got more information and contacts than you did before. And now you do have a group of people to talk about stuff too. And so that was just, golly, that was so powerful. And I freaking lost it. I did not mean to, but I did. I started crying, and you know what? It's real, right? It's real. And I'm not going to pretend I don't have feelings or I'm passionate about something. I mean, I poured my heart and soul into this summit. It was bound to show up how passionate about it I was at some point. And it just happened to be at the end. So that was really cool. I would say, looking at each of the speakers and the session topics, I don't think there was like this one is my absolute favorite, but I would say different sessions hit for different people, right? Like, depending on what you were going through and what you particularly needed, that past week, certain sessions were going to hit you differently. Some people really resonated with this one, didn't really resonate with that one, and then others were opposite. And so that was really cool because I think everybody got something from every session. But I think some of them hit more with different people in the room, which again is to be expected, right? I think that's definitely expected. One of the favorite parts of the entire event was on day 1. We were wrapping up, and we weren't planning. I guess because there was no no other teammate here. I wasn't planning on doing like a happy hour or drinking or anything like that, just because I wasn't sure the dynamic in the room. And we were going to have a minor in the room. They ended up not coming. But I just wanted to make sure everybody felt included. And so, since we were kind of expecting a minor, I didn't know if having drinks was the right move. Also, because I didn't want it to be about having drinks, right? Like, I don't know. I haven't really been drinking a whole lot lately. And so I wasn't sure what that was going to look like. And honestly, again, if I were to have had an open bar, that was a cost that it was like, does it make sense for me to put the expense in that area, or does it make sense to put the expense in a different area? And so I did not pay for an open bar, and we weren't planning on having drinks. However, in the afternoon, the event venue was like, hey, just so you know, our bartender is here. And if you guys would like to do a cash bar, we can definitely open that up for you while you do like your networking. So the afternoon of day 1, there was an hour or so of networking, and then we were going to move into dinner, and then it was going to be done. Well, I said, you know what? Let's go ahead and do that. I could use, I could definitely use a glass of cider. They made homemade cider there on site from their own orchard. And I was really excited to try that, kind of from that agritourism lens. It was something I was like, yeah, let's do that. So they did have some beers. They did have some in-house wine and some in-house cider for sale. So it was a cash bar. And I think the majority of people enjoyed that because they were like, yeah, we could have used a little drink to wind down. Nobody got silly. I mean, nobody drank so much that it was like, oh my gosh. Like, everybody was very respectful and professional and still had a couple of drinks, but nobody was like crazy. But this was my favorite part of the evening because I would say probably 10 people, the majority of them were sleeping there on site. So they just had to like walk back to their cabin. But we had a couple glasses of beer and cider and things like that. And we were sitting around like one of those propane fireplaces, just having a continued conversation. But like I said, there was probably like 10 or so of us just chilling and winding down, and everybody else had kind of left at that point and was going back to their hotel to chill out. And we just had such good conversation. And I even heard the next day, the folks that had kind of stuck around a little bit longer around the fire, they're like, that was our favorite part. Can you incorporate that into the next one, where we can maybe have a couple of different fire pits and just kind of sit around, low pressure, like very low key. Just like you can have those deep conversations without it being in a formal classroom kind of setting. And so that is something that I'm going to consider for the next time, which again, the most asked question at the AgriMind Summit was, when's the next one? Which to me, that chalks this up as a win, right? Like, if people want to know when the next one is, that must have meant that they had a good time and that they got something out of it. And so I don't have dates or anything for the next one. However, I guess I ought to get planning. But the next logical step for those who went to the summit, if they've not already gone through AgriMinds Live, is to join AgriMinds Live. I mean, that was something that I did share with them and invite them to participate in after the summit, was to join AgriMinds Live. So the doors did open for those at the summit to join. So a couple of the seats are already filled. Um, and the doors will be opening to the public April 1st, 2026. And so this is going to be outdated fairly quickly because I'm going to try to get this edited and out into the public, out into the world here pretty soon. So if you're listening to this when these air, the AgriMind Summit did fill a couple of seats for AgriMinds Live. However, there are still a couple seats and the doors will be opening soon. And all the information you can find on my website, caseybull.com/AgriMinds. But for those of you who are listening to this and it's way, way, way in the past, right? For those of you who are listening to this and you're like, this was a year ago. It's 2027 right now, Casey. For those of you who are listening and it is in the future from the time of recording, my goal, my plan, as I hope that I am still offering AgriMinds Live, and maybe it's called something different at that point. Maybe it looks a little different, but that's my goal, is that I continue to offer some sort of group cohort. And I hope that we have another summit between now and then. Maybe it'll be a yearly thing. Again, this is kind of like a time capsule for myself to look back on too. So even if nobody ever listens to this other than myself, this is a nice little time capsule. And we talked about this at the summit, actually. So Greg and I were talking about how we both keep journals. I am not a multi-page, full page journaler. I am a like one line a day. So they have these books on Amazon called One Line a Day, a 5-year journal. And so you literally write one line a day. And so it's really cool to look back over, multiple years. It's like, okay, on this date, 2 years ago, here's what I was dealing with or working through or had won this, whatever. Had some sort of celebration or big win. And a year from now, a year later, this is what it looked like. And so that's really cool. And he and I were talking about that, and he had shared, 10 years ago, he wrote something down in his journal and he found it recently and was like, that was the answer to the thing that he was struggling with now. And so it's just really cool to look back on what your past self is experiencing and what you want to tell your future self, and then your future self going back and looking at your past self's writings, and just really cool. And so I hope that this is uh, a piece of information that future Casey can look back on and remember what it was like to plan an event from scratch, going against the advice of so many people, right? Again, I had so many people saying, this is how you should do it. And if you want a successful event, you should do this. If you want to make any money, you should do this. And I went against all the advice. And maybe I should have listened to them, but honestly, I chalk this up as a success. I'm so pleased with how this event turned out. I can sleep at night knowing that I feel like I did the people in the room justice and I served them well. And I wasn't like a snake for anything. Like, I just feel like I can sleep at night knowing that I truly thought about every single part of this experience with them in mind. And I didn't do this out of got to make money. I didn't do this out of hopefully this, grows and scales my social media and I become famous or viral. Like that wasn't the goal for me. The goal for me was simply to provide a space for people in the agriculture industry to talk about the stuff that they may not be able to have a place to talk about, and to find tools and resources and a community of other people who get it and who have similar struggles, or can help them in some way. And I can sleep at night knowing that that's exactly what I did. And so, Casey, I am proud of you. Dang, girl, you did it. Like, that was something else we talked about, was just like being proud of yourself and like looking at yourself in the mirror and like truly speaking good, kind words to yourself, and speaking about what do you want to have happen, not what do you not want to have happen, in the language piece, which Greg talked about a lot. And if you haven't listened to his podcast episode, just scroll back a few and you'll be able to see Greg Kruger and I's conversation. And we talk about language and how important it is. So that was really cool. One thing I did not prepare for was a cancellation of a speaker last minute. So God bless Alex. She's just the sweetest soul. Unfortunately, she could not make it to the summit. She was going to be a speaker on the panel and was going to be a speaker on day 2 around productivity and time management and burnout. And my goodness, that was going to be such a good session. And unfortunately, like Thursday afternoon, she reached out to me and she's like, I'm supposed to fly out on Monday and I just can't. Here's what's going on. And so I had to come up with something to talk about on day 2. And I struggled with what I was going to do with that. And I use this as an example in my problem solving session. I was like, here's the problem, right? Like, here's a couple of my options, my solutions that I could move forward with. Which one is the best one based off of, resources, availability, time, etc. And so what I decided to do was I gave a little bit of a glimpse to the people in the room at the summit into what we would be talking about inside of AgriMinds Live when we were talking about time mastery. And so I gave them the time mastery toolkit, which you can find on my website, which I'll also put in the show notes. And you can take a look at it too. There aren't very many instructions inside of the time mastery toolkit because it was something that was meant for those inside of AgriMinds Live. And we go through how the toolkit works, plus so much more. We talk about so much more around time mastery and productivity, and our mindsets around productivity, and how to not add more to your plate to get more done, but how do you optimize the time that you have? How do you automate, eliminate, delegate? How do you do a now, next, later with the items on your list? Because let's be real, everything on your list is important. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't be on your list. And so we did talk about that. So I introduced the concept, and then that's when I invited them to join AgriMinds Live, and I could work with them on the time mastery toolkit. So if you're listening to this and you're like, that sounds interesting, go download it. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but if you need help, you can always reach out to me and we can get a session on the books to walk through how to implement that and incorporate it into your life. But so that's what I ended up doing. And I struggled because I was like, oh my God, what am I going to talk about? Like, that's 90 minutes that I now have to fill. I should have had a backup plan. And that's one of the things that I didn't think about, right? Like, when you plan an event, I'm sure other event planners have backup plans. I didn't. Lesson learned. But I was sitting there probably, I think this was like Friday, and I was like, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to talk about? What's the right thing to put here? Do I try and put something together that's similar to what Alex is going to be talking about? Or do I come up with something completely different? Because I didn't have time to change the agenda or anything. Like, nobody knew Alex wasn't coming except for Alex and I. And so what do I do in this situation? And I had this thought kind of like land on me that if a preacher can come up with a new sermon every single Sunday, week after week, month after month, year after year, even. And yes, I'm sure they recycle some of their sermons or they tweak them a little bit. Heck, they maybe even do the same exact thing every 5 years. I don't know. I'm sure that there's a method. They surely don't start from scratch every single time. If they can do that because they know the material, right? They know the Bible, they know the audience, they know the material, right? Surely I can come up with a 90-minute session based off of something that I know. And what I know is time mastery, boundaries, leadership, and mindset. And so I already had the tool. So the time mastery toolkit, I already had the content. All I needed to do was talk about it. I feel like it did help several people in the room based off of feedback that I got. They were like, those were some just really good tips, right? And so they have something to take home, but also the next step would be to join AgriMinds Live and let's implement it together, right? AgriMinds Live is that it's an intentional, structured curriculum, if you will, that we go over 12 weeks. Every single week is a learn a little, do a little. So you'll learn a little about the topic, and then there will be time for coaching and masterminding and just open conversation with those in your cohort. And every time you're in a cohort, not only do you get to meet weekly for 90 minutes for 12 weeks, you also get access to Voxer, which is like a walkie-talkie slash texting app that you get put into a group chat with. So your cohort can help hold you accountable, brainstorm ideas, talk about, hey, here's a win that I had, or you can reach out to me privately and we can have one-on-one conversations. So you basically get a coach for 12 weeks, plus you get a community for 12 weeks, plus you get access to all of the videos and the workbooks and all the resources that we talk about too. So it's really cool, and I'm really excited for those who were at the AgriMinds Summit who joined AgriMinds Live because it's just a continuation, right? Like it's taking some of the stuff we've talked about at the summit and continuing to build on it and dive deeper alongside other people. And so it's going to be so cool, and it's been really awesome to see how it's evolved over the years. I mean, when I first started my business, I was doing one-on-one coaching, and then I started the 12-week group coaching program, which was just called AgriMinds. And then I built out from there, and I had the AgriMinds podcast, and then I have AgriMinds Essential, which is like a small mini self-paced version of AgriMinds Live. And then we've now renamed AgriMinds to AgriMinds Live, which is the live coaching and training program. And then there's AgriMinds Intensive, which is AgriMinds Live, but delivered one-on-one. So it's the same content, except for it's delivered privately. So you and I will go through the program together, just you and I. We are so intentional. We will talk only about you and your goals, and you don't have to share that time with anybody else. And here's where this is beneficial. Sometimes people don't want other people to know what they're going through. Sometimes they prefer one-on-one versus the group, but they want that structured 12-week timeline. So, and then obviously we've got the AgriMinds Summit. So now we've got this entire ecosystem of different ways to deliver these topics and this information to those in the industry. And I mean, it's just really cool to see how it's all evolved. And I have no idea what's next. Like I said, the most common question that I got at the summit was, when's the next one? And so I appreciate you if you've been hanging out for the last 40 minutes, listening to me ramble and debrief with myself. Um, this has been really good for me. It's given me a lot of awareness around, holy cow, I didn't know I was capable of doing something like this. I mean, I grew up on a farm in West Central Indiana. I had no idea that I was capable of pulling something like this off. And I did it, and I'm proud of myself. And I am totally stepping into this newfound power and new level of skill and creativity. And I didn't know I could do something like this, and so I kind of just did it to prove it to myself I was capable of it, but then I also did it because I know that there is a big need for it within the agriculture industry, and this just proved that I was right. It proved people are ready to have conversations. People want to talk about this. They're ready to shift. They just may not know where to start or what the right next step is. And so this was a great learning experience. And I hope that those of you who were in the room with me at the summit, you got out of it exactly what you needed and then some. I did get a quote from here's a couple of quotes from the feedback form. There needs to be more events like AGRIMINDS. This was exactly what I needed and exactly what I hoped it was going to be. So that just, again, confirms that there is a space that is needed for these types of conversations and it matters. But if there's anything that I can do for you, please reach out to me. If there is a part of this podcast episode that you would like for me to expand on, feel free to leave a comment, shoot me a message. But I'm excited to see what happens next. We'll see if there is going to be another pillar inside the AgriMinds ecosystem that has yet to be identified. I'll be interested to see, looking back in a couple of years from now and listening to this episode, what's evolved, what's changed, what have I learned, what have I let go of? Maybe there's something that in my business doesn't serve me anymore and that I've kind of outgrown. So it'll be really interesting to see. So, okay, well, that's all for now. And I hope I can see you in AgriMinds Live. Talk to y'all soon.